When I first joined the company, I was eager to prove myself. My boss noticed my dedication, and soon I was the one he relied on the most. I stayed late to finish his reports, organized his travel plans, and even took personal calls on his behalf. At first, I thought it was just part of being ambitious, but slowly, I realized I was giving him a place in my life that should have belonged to my husband. My husband used to ask why I worked so late or why I seemed more worried about my boss's problems than our own household. I brushed off his concerns, telling him it was just work and nothing personal. Deep inside, though, I knew I was crossing lines. Not in an obvious way, but in the way I prioritized my boss over my marriage. When my boss asked me to accompany him to out-of-town meetings, I agreed without hesitation. I handled everything for him, his schedule, his meals, his comfort, things I never did for my husband at home. My husband noticed my constant excuses and how distant I became, but I ignored his pain. Friends began to whisper, and even my family raised questions. Why do you care so much about your boss? Why not your husband? I laughed it off, but those words stayed in the back of my mind. I convinced myself I was doing it for my career, but in reality, I had lost balance. One evening, my husband confronted me directly. He asked if there was something between me and my boss. I denied it instantly, but he didn't believe me anymore. He told me that whether I admitted it or not, my actions had already betrayed him. That night, he slept in a different room, and the silence between us grew heavier. Over time, I noticed how cold he had become. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped waiting for me at dinner. The man who once cared about every detail of my life was slipping away, and I was too blind to stop it. My attention was still wrapped around my boss's needs. The breaking point came when my boss invited me to a company dinner, and I missed our wedding anniversary. My husband had prepared a quiet evening for the two of us, but I walked in late, exhausted and distracted. He didn't argue that night. He simply handed me the divorce papers the next morning. I was shocked. I begged him to reconsider, but he told me it was too late. He said he had felt like a stranger in his own marriage for far too long, and I had left him with no choice. The pain in his eyes was something I will never forget. What hurt even more was what he did afterward. He told everyone the truth, or at least, his version of it. He told our families, our friends, and even mutual acquaintances that I had put my boss before him in every way. He painted me as someone who abandoned her marriage for her career. Suddenly, the whispers turned into open judgment. People looked at me differently. Some avoided me altogether. Others made comments behind my back. The respect I once had as a loyal wife and responsible woman was gone. I had built my reputation on trust, and now it was shattered. My boss never faced any consequences. He simply moved on, delegating tasks to someone else. I realized then how replaceable I was to him, while to my husband, I had been everything. I had lost the one person who truly cared for me. Nights became unbearable. I would lie awake, thinking of all the moments I had chosen work over my marriage. I thought about how easily I had brushed aside my husband's feelings and how much he had silently endured before giving up. In the end, I learned a painful lesson. Cheating doesn't always mean being physically unfaithful. Sometimes it's about giving your loyalty, time, and devotion to someone else when they rightfully belong to your partner. My husband was right. I betrayed him in ways I never realized until it was too late. Now, I live with the weight of that mistake. The divorce papers were just the final act, but the real punishment is knowing I gave away my marriage piece by piece, and when I finally looked back, there was nothing left to save.